high water in the tidal port. And as the misty curtain rises from the river, an age-old act begins. All along the waterfront, the guardians of property relax after their long night's vigil. From the tidal limits down to the estuary, wharves which have lain silent in the darkness will soon stir with activity. The sightless warehouses will spring to life. As the new day dawns, the men of the docks return. The sentinel cranes unbend to take the strain of a new day's load. And quickly the ebb and flow of trade begins. From the inland towns and open countryside come the products of the factory and the field, travelling out of the night along thousands of miles of gleaming rails, arterial roads, and ancient waterways. Inside the inland docks, the heavily laden lorries and the railway wagons discharge their loads into the waiting barges. From the canals, the last lock gates pass export cargoes onward towards the sea, and in return accept the raw influx of the previous day. The pulse of commerce quickens. Out in the tideway, tugs round up their cumbrous charges, broad river lighters 2 by 2, canal barges in triplets, cargoes well battened down under weatherproof jute tarpaulins. The first tug gets away, its string of barges cracking like a whip behind it. And so the river, in this case the tranquil Thames, carries goods down to the ships, cutting through the heart of its city, laying bare a cross-section of its daily life. Until at length, beneath the protecting arms of Tower Bridge, into the heart of the Port of London. Yes, this is the Port of London, the largest and most complex on earth. But the pattern of life within it would be much the same in any one of 1,000 ports throughout the world. For docks are crossroads for cargoes coming from the uttermost parts of the earth. And whether the great port be Manchester or Glasgow, Calcutta, Sydney or New York, ships of all nations berth alongside the wharves and quays. From north and south, east and west they come, across the oceans and the inland seas, from India, Japan and the Antipodes. Swedish timber ships and Antarctic whalers, Russian grain ships and coastal traders. No sooner have they berthed than they start discharging, for time is money and a quicker turnaround is money saved. From their cavernous and musty holds into the light of day come the treasures of the earth, the riches by which men live: wheat, rice, meat, coffee, fruit, potatoes and groundnut meal, nitrates, potash, metal ore, rubber, copra, cork dust, wattle bark and charcoal. The clerks scratch at their bills of lading and check their weights much as they have done since Chaucer was a clerk in London's port, for the pattern of commerce changes little. Cables for export, sugar for import, wire for industry, and hides for leather. And with nearly every cargo goes something seldom noticed, something essential, but so much a part of transport and trade that it's taken for granted. Jute. Jute sacks. Jute Hessian. Jute and felt padding, and incidentally, jute inside the car's upholstery. Jute canvas and jute tarpaulin. Jute. The fibre of this plant, at one time used solely for hand-woven Indian cloth, has become after little more than 100 years the most widely used packing material in the world. As the Industrial Revolution gathered momentum, the jute yarn spinning industry expanded in sympathy, supplying an insatiable demand for a cheap, tough textile. Today, India is still the home of the jute industry, for the mighty mills near Calcutta, of which this is only one, produce about 3/4 of the world's supply of jute fabrics. And today, jute must be provided for 101 ancillary uses, such as linoleum, which is spread while hot on a backing of jute, and later packed in jute for export, for rugs and carpets, for decorative building board, and even for false hair and beards. But first and foremost, as the world's great carrier, jute packing must keep pace with the world's demands for transported goods. When great herds are sacrificed to the world's growing hunger, more sides of beef and nutritious offal must be protected by jute from the hour they are frozen until they reach their destination. When more sheep are sheared in Australia, more wool must be shipped in jute-covered wool packs, safely protected on the long voyage which ends in Britain's docks. When raw rubber is shipped in bareback bales like these, the heat and pressure at the bottom of the ship's hold may distort them into shapeless, sticky lumps, hard to handle and slow to unload. But Hessian-covered rubber does not stick. It keeps its shape, and the marks and numbers remain easy to read. The most awkward shapes can be swathed in Hessian without fear of tearing the wrapper, and easily damaged parts can be guarded against rough handling in transit. Jute is sufficiently porous to allow cereals and other foods to breathe, and can be treated to keep insects at bay. On the other hand, a double twill will prevent fine powders like zinc oxide from puffing through the fabric of the bag. And talking of chemicals, jute fabric resists mild corrosive action. And can be used for packing substances like soda ash and fertilizers. Jute can also be made rot resistant. This sack contains wattle bark extract, which was a dripping wet paste when it was packed in Durban. It reaches the tannery months later with the fabric as strong as ever and has to be cut away before the solid block of wattle gum can be broken up. Jute is tough. This chap's cutting the steel hoops, but the jute stands up to the punishment. Jute sacks can be built into huge stacks without slipping, and the bottom bags won't burst under the strain. Believe it or not, this pile of bags has stood outdoors for 3 years, and it takes some shifting. The boys are not too dainty with those cargo hooks either. Yes, jute is tough. By evening, these bags reach a riverside refinery by lighter. Here they are hoisted high over the water to the silo, and they're hoisted in slings. Jute bags don't need platforms. Once again, the vicious hooks sink into the sacks. These chaps can't afford to waste time. They're handling a dollar export and working round the clock. There goes the sugar sampler. Few materials would tolerate his bayonet practice methods. And here comes the refined sugar ready for export to a hungry world. wrapped and sealed safely in a double covering of Hessian and twill. Rhythmically, the transporter crane whisks set after set of bags into the waiting barges. Out in the river, the evening tide is ebbing. Among the huddled barges, the late arrivals are made fast. The tugs which have towed them return to moorings. As the daylight fades, the weary men of the port wend their way homeward. But the refinery works on. Side by side stand the great cranes. As one takes up its hard, raw load, the other lowers soft, new bags into the lighters. And so the pulse of commerce beats steadily on into the night, symbolic of the job which Jute is doing every day, the job which really makes it a yarn worth spinning.